Alrighty, everyone. Welcome to the C3 Recruits podcast. Every month I do a podcast, write a recruiting newsletter, and through the c3recruits.com website, I have a messaging system that subscribers can ask me any questions they want about recruiting. So it's been great so far. I have a lot of individuals on board, have a lot of club ball and junior college organizations on board with everybody, all their families. And they're asking me a ton of questions, which is great. And I know this is near and dear to the heart of my guest today, Courtney Klepsch, who, I mean, she's a rock star. She is a rock star baseball mom. So, first of all, thanks for joining today, Courtney.
Thanks for having me.
So, yeah, I mean, you are a baseball mom. I mean, you've been through it, right? I obviously know your family a little bit. Having helped Addison a little bit that first time around. Um,
hmm
you went through it, and then now he's living that SEC life, and now you're going to
hmm
be doing it all over again
All over.
all over again with another young one. But before we kind of dive into your path, kind of as a mom and what you've done, can you talk a little bit about what you've been doing lately with Glove and Grace?
Sure. Yeah, so Glove and Grace is a website slash blog that I started at the beginning of the year. It's definitely a work in progress. It was an idea that I've had for quite some time, and basically it's an opportunity for me to share personal experiences about raising athletes with love and grace, but also wanted to focus on the philosophy and the core values that our family has. And so, really the idea stemmed with I wish I had other moms to speak with during the process of moms that had already gone through the process. So whether it was college recruiting, whether it was high school baseball, either MLB scouting, really wanted to have sort of a mentor and never really had that. And so with Glove and Grace, I'm kind of hoping that's what I can accomplish in terms of sharing some personal stories. Obviously, want to be respectful to my family's journey, but also to tell real stories about what it's like out there, and then just kind of other things too, like sharing tips that I've kind of learned along the way. Like I never wash my son's, or I never take off my son's belts. I just stick them on and throw them in the wash. And then just kind of what I've learned about nutrition too. I am not a nutritionist, but I've learned so much about how to pack protein packed meals, using Instagram as kind of the guide, and other snacks to make for my athletes. But then, most importantly, I really just want to bring a positive approach on the mini wins and even the losses that the families and the athletes face.
Awesome. Awesome. And just so everybody knows, I know we've talked very little bit about it so far, but Courtney, she co-founded one of the biggest travel organizations, club organizations in San Diego. She has been all over the country, showcases and tournaments. She kind of knows what to do and what not to do, right? Depending on the type of player you are, which is huge, right? That information is huge to have. Helping obviously your oldest the first time through, managing a Division I recruiting calendar. What does that look like, right? What camps, what showcases, what schools should we visit? It can be a lot. And I know we're going to have, we're going to have the Glove and Grace handle on your screen. But what is that for people that want to follow it?
It's just gloveandgrace.com is the website. And then you can find me at on Instagram. And I believe if you just search for Glove and Grace, you should be able to find it as well.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, let's dive into this a little bit.
Sure.
I've obviously helped a lot of players, and everybody's path is a little different. And you've gone
Mhm.
through it, and you're, like we said, you're going to go through it again. But with a freshman in college right now, can you kind of walk us through? What was that like? What did you do throughout the recruiting process as a mom while he was going through it?
Yeah, well, I do have to say that everything is so different now, just in the couple of years where, we did go through it. So all of the rules have changed, and everything seems pretty fluid right now. So everything that, we went through, although it will be applicable, for when we hopefully go through it again. Um, but it all has changed. But I think the number one thing that I did as a mom, and I would say that, my husband, who also, he's very much at the core of all of this. He he basically allowed well, we both allowed, I guess, our son to take the lead, right? So he was the one that was trying to accomplish his goals, and we wanted to support the best that we could. And we had to decide as parents, what's important for our son in terms of helping him with his goals,
Hmm.
and for playing at the next level. So we needed to be honest. We needed to have transparent conversations with our son, but also with coaches and with advisors. I think as a mom, and especially one who, I ran track and cross country 25 years ago as a D1 athlete, and I had my experiences of my own. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't necessarily bringing my experiences into the situation, because I wanted to make sure that it was his own. So, really understanding his abilities, his goals, the opportunities, and then trying to put it all together. And using, my marketing background, I was able to help both my son and then my, husband. We worked together to work on his marketing platforms, social media, websites, all of that.
That's a big part of it, right? The social media stuff's a big part of it. And,
Huge.
I've never been a huge proponent of social media on a, on a personal level, but I do know that it plays a role in the recruiting world these days, right? If a coach goes out and watches a game and they see a player they like, right? The first thing they do is they go to Twitter, usually, right? Or
Yes.
X. And that's just what they do these days. So it is a part of it. And I know you guys obviously did a great job of it to where I don't think it was anything that was overbearing for him. He was able to manage it. You guys obviously helped a little bit. But the big thing that I'm getting is, and I just came out with the uncommitted book, right? That
Mhm.
kind of talks about the different kids that go through the recruiting process. And ultimately for parents, it's the kid's journey, right? And you need to be supportive, and you can help them where you can, but being overbearing is something that parents don't know where that line is necessarily. And I think the reason that you are on this call and not another parent is because I think you guys did a great job first time around and probably going to do a great job second time around. But if you could do something different, okay, kid two's going through, right? And he's obviously got a little ways to go, right? He's a freshman, so probably 2, 3 years to go until things pick up. But what are you going to do differently? Do you think this time?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the landscape has totally changed. So there's a bit of a learning curve there in starting. When do we start the process? The process for Addison did start earlier, but that's because it was different, right? And so, in terms of support, we will allow Dominic to again take the lead. That hasn't changed, and if the athlete's heart isn't in it, then nothing's going to work. And so, like you said, it's important for the athletes to take the lead, and not for the parents to be overbearing. I'd say this time around, we're focused on other areas that we know are important to Dominic's development: nutrition, strength, speed, and even the mental approach to the game. We're fortunate to have access to those resources that we learned through Addison's journey. And some worked and some didn't work. And we found, maybe the folks that we wanted to work with again, and maybe others that just, for whatever reason, nothing bad, but just it wasn't the right fit. We still have those resources. And so I think, right now at this time, we're focused on development. We can't even talk to coaches until I think it's the summer before his junior year.
August,
So we're really
August,
just
yeah,
focused on the present and how we can support that development.
yeah. And it's by the time he's a junior, the rules will probably be different again.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
I think understanding that, these kids, they have a lot of other things going on, right? Aside from just simply being a kid, right? And trying
Right.
to live the life of a 15, 16, 17-year old, we oftentimes put a lot of unnecessary, pressure on them to do things the right way instead of just going and playing and having fun. And when you
Yes.
perform well, obviously you want to work as hard as you can and put in that extra work, but you got to understand that there's a life to live too outside of the baseball field. And I'm learning this more and more as I listen to golfers talk, right?
Mhm.
Golfers, they're
Yeah.
going through the process, and the mental side of things is so huge for them. And they start talking about, they get to a certain point in their career where, they have families and they understand if, they hit a ball in the water, life's going to go on. they're still going to
Yeah.
work hard and hopefully things work out. But I think these kids have it pretty tough these days from a lot of different avenues, a lot of different voices. So it's nice to have a support system of parents behind that can really help. Um, you know, I think again that it's been so different for what it's going to look like for Dominic. But what do you think that the most difficult thing for him is going to be over these next 2 years on the recruiting side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that's going to make a change for high school recruiting across the board is the portal. And it used to be where where prep or high school was recruited heavily, right? And so colleges would have big classes coming in, that freshman year, and I think that's going to change a lot, where those prep classes, those recruited classes, are definitely smaller, and so the colleges will be pulling more from the portal. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. And so I think, right now it's going to be us managing expectations on Dominic's side, because, he has aspirations of going D1, and we 100% support that. But we also know that the landscape has totally changed. So we need to not squash any dreams of any sort, but think about the approach probably differently. Like, maybe it looks like you go to this type of a school instead to start. And you never want to think that you're going into a school just to switch and go into the portal. But the reality is that it does exist. And so for high schoolers or for prep players right now, it is different. And so it's a different process, and we don't even know what that looks like yet.
Yeah,
I mean, I would say that Addison's class, when he was recruited, and one of the coaches had even said to me, this is likely the last class of this size. Like, we probably won't take this many incoming freshmen again.
yeah, it's going to continue to change, and we are when this podcast comes out, we're just a couple weeks away from some potential rule changes, right? Which is going to
Right.
be potentially game changing for the high school game, and junior college maybe is more appealing.
Mhm.
Maybe for those higher academic kids going to that high academic D3 school, and if you really really perform and you want to leave and go to the Division 1 world out of there, you can. There's just so many different options now, as opposed to 10, 15 years ago when kids are going through it and saying, hey, I want to go here. I want to, play for 3 years and get drafted, or be here for 4 years and have a great college experience. That's just not
Right.
happening as much anymore. So we're going to continue to see changes. And as long as, again, these kids have parents or coaches or mentors or scouts or agents or whoever that can give them the necessary information to help make things a little bit more streamlined is really important. Ken, back to parents. You talk to a lot of parents, right? And I know you're not the mom that's going to go sit behind the left field fence. You're bubbly. People want to talk to you, and you've kind of seen what does the crazy parent look like? What does the model parent look like? If you could kind of describe, what does your model parent look like that you think these college coaches, because college coaches will say no to a family because of the parent. What does your model parent look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the model parent is very supportive. The model parent to me is not standing up against the fence, chirping out, to the player. I think the model parent is enjoying the game, is sitting back, watching, engaged. I mean, I get it. Some people have to walk, some people have to stand off to the side. That's obviously going to happen. I think the model parent isn't yelling at the umpire. I think the model parent understands that, you know, there's going to be errors, and to not really focus on those errors during the game, because that's certainly not helpful. And then, I would even say after the game on the way home, we don't really talk about the game. I mean, it's a little bit different now because we live like a block from the school, so it's different. But even when we were in those drives, we never talked about the game unless the child wanted to, right? So if Addison or Dominic wanted to talk about it, we'll talk about it. But it was never, okay, maybe the game was great and we're going to talk about it. Maybe the game wasn't so great and we're going to talk about it. But it was always brought up by the child. And, for me as a parent, I always tried to focus on What can we do different if there was a situation, and it was never about errors. It was, if it was about attitude or effort, really. That's, so just like the athlete can only control what they can control, I would say that for a model parent, it's just the same, understanding that you can, control the controllables with yourself, but then also how you approach just watching the game. I mean, these are kids in high school, and little league and lower, that are trying to do their best most of the time. And so I think just trying to be positive, you don't have to bury your head in the sand and kind of blow up a kid. If I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying enjoy the game. And again, if their heart's in it and if it's what they want to do, you're gonna know that pushing them to try to be something that they aren't or they're not ready for isn't going to change anything.
Yeah, I mean, that is so good. That was kind of going to be my next topic is, the drive home. And that's
Yeah.
something that I've heard people talk about. I remember, my dad, coached me when I was younger, and we were, to be honest, like if you're looking at kind of a high pressure situation for 12-year-olds, that was it, right? It was the beginning of travel ball. We had, probably one of the better teams in the country, and parents expected us to win. It was
Hmm.
kind of a high stress situation, even though we were 12, which is crazy to think about. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I didn't feel that too much, but I think the parents did. And I
Hmm.
think my dad did a good job, like you talk about, if the child brings it up and wants to talk about it, great. If you
Hmm.
need to talk to them as a parent about a behavioral issue, right? Those topics, they need to be discussed, right? If you got a kid that's, not being a good teammate in the dugout, throwing stuff, not hustling out to the field, okay, if that's a conversation that comes up, and as a parent you're saying, hey, are you enjoying playing? Right? These are
Hmm.
deeper
Yeah.
conversations rather than,
That's right.
hey man, you weren't moving your feet to get around that ball. That's why you threw it away. Like those conversations are probably not very good. And I think my dad, when I was younger, he had a 24-hour rule for the parents. They weren't
It's good.
allowed to communicate with him until 24 hours after a situation arose, right? Hey, you took my kid out of the game in a big
Yeah.
situation. It's hurting his confidence. Those conversations couldn't happen until the next day, which I think is important. And for these kids to sit there and feel that pressure of even for some of these games where there's, it's a fall ball, winter ball game, nobody's around, you're just getting reps in and you're still competing, but to put that unnecessary pressure on them is usually coming from the parents, not coming
Yeah.
from the kids. So it's unfortunate the way it's done by a lot of people, but I think the more people can hear, from someone like you, again, that's been through it and seen the good and the bad of the crazy parents and the respectable parents that handle it well is going to be really important. If you could give advice, let's say, maybe a kid a little older than you, okay, a little older than Dominic right now, that's maybe, going into his junior or senior year here in the next few months, what advice would you give those parents right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's so cliche, but I think it's enjoy the ride. It's going to be over before you know it, whether they go on to play in college or not. I mean, we have a son that plays in college, and we don't get to see all of his games because we have to travel. It's a vacation, a mini vacation to go see him play now. So um, you know, you have to know that, like you said, kids are actually putting a lot of pressure on themselves already, and it's different than when we were playing sports. I mean, the landscape now, where they have access to all of these different resources and the expectations that go along with, a travel ball team is so different than, what we had back in the day where maybe a local paper might pick something up
Yeah.
about a game, but, now it's all over social media when something happens. And so, everything, they're already holding on to so much, probably themselves, that the extra pressure of you harping on them about this, that, or the other probably isn't contributing to their success. And so I would say, as much as you can, enjoy the ride and see it through their eyes. I think that for me, that was probably one of the biggest things that I learned as a parent. And it really wasn't until last year. Um, I had a moment where I'm an extrovert, um, and I love people. I'm a social butterfly, like you had mentioned, and so my kids, they're social, but they love baseball. And as a parent, I always kind of, I don't want to say struggle. It's almost too strong of a word because we are a baseball family, and we've there's been so many blessings and joys that we've gotten from baseball. But it's like, when is too much, right? And so, I think the one thing that changed my mind about all of that, and it was from the perspective of enjoying the ride, was that I saw it through my son's eyes. And, like, Addison had a moment where he was talking to a coach, during a recruiting visit, and they asked him a question about what his goal was. And, I think everyone, including me, said to play in the MLB. And he said, I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame. And it actually chokes me up because it was at that moment when I realized this is the dream, and now I see it through his eyes. And so those moments where I thought, gosh, I wish we could have taken a family vacation, or wish we, could have done this, that, or other. Those quote unquote regrets, which again, too strong of a word because I don't have regrets about my boys being in baseball, but they kind of just all vanished because I understood that, you know, we really were letting him lead the way with boundaries. And we're doing the same with Dominic. And I don't think we would have been able to do that if we weren't taking a step back and actually enjoying the process of what we were living in. So I do think if you can enjoy the ride, if you can see it through your kids' eyes, if you can take a step back and understand that, they're doing the best that they can the majority of the time, they already have enough pressure on themselves, and be supportive where, they need support. Those to me are the biggest things that you can do. Our kids are still kids, and they're not miniature professionals. They're not, people who don't need help. And so, it's okay to sit with them and to have conversations about, like, what are your goals? What is it that you want to accomplish? Okay, let's talk about that. How can we support you? And I think if you do that kind of as a baseline, which to me, as a parent of baseball players, is huge. Setting goals, talking about them, understanding them, see where you can help as a parent, what they need to do as an athlete, is going to make the process and the whole journey so much more enjoyable because you have those goals in mind. But it also, again, just kind of back to my main point to bring it all together, is to enjoy the ride.
Yeah, man, I got shivers a couple times right there.
I know I almost started crying.
Oh, it's funny because as I got my little 4-year-old, and I'm so far away from, I'm going to t-ball games, right? And I'm already like getting excited, right? And at times I find myself thinking, what is this going to be like in 10 years, 12 years, rather than just enjoying these moments right now, which is all we have, right? That's all we have, is to live. The future is the future we have right now. And I think, you mentioned in Addison wanting to be in the Hall of Fame is like, we all have our goals. And some kids, it might be, hey, I want to go play at this small Division 3 school that has this degree, right? And everybody's a little different. And I think the comparison stuff on, we're getting on social media these days makes it really, really hard. But it is part of it right now. So, to be able to manage that and understand that this is stuff that these kids go through, and trying to live, like you said, through that scope is probably difficult for a lot of parents. But hopefully they get some information from things like this. Obviously the book that I wrote, hopefully they can get some information from that. Obviously, if they need to reach out to you again, we'll have the handle down there, Glove and Grace.
Okay.
Again, Courtney is one of a kind, and I know she's going to help a lot of people that need help in this world, especially on the baseball front for moms. So, Courtney, I really appreciate you hopping on here today. This information was awesome. It's going to get into a lot of parents' ears, which is great, and I'm sure we'll be seeing each other down the road.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye bye.